Hello. How's everybody doing tonight? Good? So I wanted to start things off with really expressing my gratitude to everybody that has shown me such wonderful support. It's truly been overwhelming to see the amount of people who resonate with my story. A lot of people who witnessed me growing up have reached out to me, and it's helping me feel seen and heard and validated. The amount of people who have explained to me, we saw it, D'Angela. I have been seeing so many people message me explaining their perspective of things growing up and what they actually witnessed. The things that my family would do to me. And I feel so seen. I feel so heard. It's honestly so beautiful. And because I was gaslighted by my family, I honestly thought that I was crazy. I honestly thought that everything that my family was saying about me was true. I mean, I was the youngest in my family, and I looked up to these people thinking that they were going to teach me how to be a human being, how to be a decent human being in this world. I looked to them for guidance and protection and to know that others saw the abuse. Really hits home for me. Really, really, really helps me with my healing. So I really just want to express my gratitude to everybody that has reached out to me and told me their perspective. It means more to me than you may ever know. And sharing my story and making the content that I'm making, I never know who's going to have a reaction to it, except the hate, you know. I've had to experience that with my extended family, you know, aunts, cousins, grandparents, telling me their perspective of, how could you be doing this? This is your family. It's wrong what you're doing. Or they don't say anything at all, but they're watching and they're judging and they're speaking about it behind my back, or they're going to my immediate family members, the abusive ones, and saying whatever they want to say. But it's not supportive. So that's what I'm seeing. So to see that from blood relatives, and then to see the support from friends of this abusive family telling me what they saw, is so meaningful to me, because it makes me understand that I'm really not making this up, because my abusive sisters have tried to silence me many times. They've tried to come onto my social media accounts and attack me and say none of this is true, and whatever they want to say, they've tried. And I've thought about it, like, okay, are they correct? Like, is this accurate? That's what they want. They want to get in my head. They want to continue to gaslight me. And, I've talked about it with my therapist, and the more that I get supportive comments from people who witnessed it firsthand, I'm finally silencing the gaslighting by my family. I mentioned in one of my support groups that everybody has an inner critic. And my inner critic has never been me. Because I was born into domestic violence and I am the youngest, my inner critic is my abusive family. Everything that they have ever said to me is my inner critic. Especially my oldest sister. I've mentioned before, she is the golden child. And every family, every dysfunctional family, each person has their own specific role. And I've posted about this on my pages. So the golden child can do no wrong. Everything that they do is correct. They make no mistakes. Even if they do make mistakes, it is not seen as a mistake. It is immediately backed up with, excuses of, they're a human being, and, they did their best, and, it's not acknowledged as being bad. It's acknowledged as, they're a human being. And they're just recognized for all of the good. So it was hard to disconnect from my oldest sister because she dug her claws deep into me. And she knew it. She knew that she had this control over me. And she loved it. There were times when I even would say to her, if you tell me anything, I'll do it. And she literally thrived off of that. And it was extremely unhealthy for so many reasons, but it was almost like I idolized her and she was like godlike. And it's not okay, I did not know what I was doing. I just saw it as love. My sister loves me and she wants the best for me. And she wants to help me and guide me. And so because she was my oldest sister, I literally did anything she told me. Literally, if she told me to do anything, I would do it. It was so dangerous. And I had no idea what I was even doing. And she's done this to all of my siblings, in my perspective. And I do remember my sister closest in age with me telling me at one point, you can go be her puppet now. You go be her puppet now. Because my oldest sister was literally like a puppeteer, controlling the reins on my mother, my father, my siblings. And, she fed off of it. I'm away from them now, but she's probably still feeding off of it. Especially seeing how my abusive sisters are, attacking me and like making fake accounts and commenting on my stuff. To see my sister closest in age with me having a relationship again with my oldest sister, it's happening all over again. And it saddens me a bit because my sister closest in age with me has said it herself. Go be her puppet now. So I know there is part of her that sees it. But I do know there's another part of her that just wants her sister. I relate to that fully. But again, this is my perspective. I would experience that myself, and I would really just want the love of my mom, my dad, my sisters, and I would just put up with it. Even when I knew something was wrong, something was up, something is not right here. But I'm like, I would see people losing their parents getting sick and dying. I would see kids even dying unexpectedly. Watching the parents mourn over their children. And I'd be like, I can't leave my family. Tomorrow isn't promised. I'll just put up with it. They're my family. I have to put up with this. Like, I can't leave them. Like, these are thoughts that would go through my brain, even though I knew that what was happening is not okay. And even my oldest sister, her being as abusive as she is, there's a part of her that even sees that this is not okay. I'm sure. But she stays and contributes to the abuse. So this is a trauma bond. And trauma bonds are dangerous. Because before you even realize you're in a trauma bond, it's sometimes too late to get out of the trauma bond. And then you feel stuck and you have no idea how to get out. So, just to see the amount of people reaching out to me and saying, the way your family treated you, D'Angela, is not okay. We saw it. And they gave examples even. And then it's like memories were unlocked. I was like, whoa, I suppressed that. I totally forgot about that. And then they bring it up and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then it was almost overwhelming because then I started remembering it all. And I went back to that moment. I was young in some of what people are telling me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, teenager. And I go back into that moment and I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't even realize. And the fact that other people saw it is like, whoa. Wow. And again, it's not the children's fault. It's not. So even these friends of my abusive family, how is it their fault? It's not. They were children. And even some of the friends would tell their parents. They would tell their parents that something is not right in this family. The way D'Angela is being treated is not right. Like that, being told that, I was like, wow. So then it makes me understand even more that I was a scapegoat. I was a black sheep. I was the lost child. I was not wanted. Because I would see the way my parents would treat my siblings. It wasn't just me who was abused. All of my siblings were abused. And I was also abused by my siblings. And sometimes my mom would stick up for me. My dad never stuck up for me. My dad was always the culprit. But my mom would stick up for me. There were times my brother would stick up for me. And there were times when both of my sisters would stick up for me. But then there were times when all of them would make fun of me. And if they had friends over, the friends would give in to the peer pressure and then they would make fun of me. And at one point, I was just so ganged up on that I didn't even realize that this wasn't healthy. I just was like, this is a part of a family. And because abuse is so normalized, if I would say that to anyone, or if they were witnessing it, or if they were contributing to it, they were just like, this is how it is in a family. Siblings are mean to each other, you know? Nothing wrong with that. It happens to me too, you know? And no one's saying I'm innocent in in all of this, because I grew up in that same family. So there were times when I was acting out of character and out of line to my siblings. You know, I've mentioned that I've contributed to my abusive family's trauma, just like they've contributed to my trauma. So there were times when I would, like when I was being hypersexual and involving myself with my sister's friends and involving myself with my brother's friends, I can only imagine the trauma that brought to my siblings. So nobody's saying that I'm innocent in this. I mean, I was born into domestic violence. This was my normal. Abuse was my normal. I would give in to peer pressure. I would chime in when my siblings or people at school were being abusive and rude, disrespectful. I would give in to peer pressure and be like, yeah, you know? So, but I was a child. My siblings were children. We were just doing what we were taught. Like I mentioned at my last live, trauma and abuse is generational. So when my parents were children, they were just children. So they were witnessing abuse and therefore being taught abuse. Then they grew up and became grown adults who had their own children. That's where they should have healed. They should have focused on the healing. But because they were not focused on the inner healing, they have become abusive. And I could not tell you if they are ever going to be dedicated on their inner healing. And then that contributes into the grandchildren. And then you have my siblings who are grown. I am grown. I am focused on my healing. I am healing. My brother's healing. He left. He's a cycle breaker. My sisters, I cannot say the same. So that's the difference, is although I have made so many mistakes in my life and I have contributed to abusive acts, I have contributed to causing trauma on people, I am focused on my inner healing now. I am saving myself. So that's the difference. So the fact that other people are telling me it was not okay what we saw. Some are even apologizing for their contribution to my trauma. Some are apologizing for just watching it and standing by and doing nothing. And my response to them is, we were just children. The fact that my parents didn't get involved, the fact that my parents were doing it. Like, there were so many times where my parents' house was like the party house. And everybody would be at my house because my parents had a pool and everybody would go there and there would be parties. And I'm this young kid. I'm the annoying little sister that just wants to be friends with all of my siblings' friends. And my siblings are like, get away from me. And then their friends see that my siblings are doing it to me. So then the friends are joining in, giving in to peer pressure. And then before I know it, nobody is sticking up for me. And I'm just like, okay, nobody likes me. I'm just annoying. I'm just in everybody's way. I'm just dumb. I'm just not cared for. I mean, that's all that I could. And I was already given names, liar. And what's interesting is I was a liar, but I was also a tattletale. I was the girl who cried wolf. I was like so many different names. And my siblings did not like me for so many reasons, because not only did I lie, but I would tell on them. So like when my siblings would throw parties, I would tell my parents. Like I was the first person to say anything. So I would be bribed by my siblings and their friends. I remember one specific circumstance where my oldest sister was throwing a house party. And she was like almost 5 years older than me. So there was a significant amount of age gap. So I was like in 5th grade and she was a freshman probably. And she had this house party. My parents weren't home. And one of her guy friends, my sister must have said I was a tattletale or whatever. And one of her guy friends came up to me on the couch in the living room and was just like, "Do you like ice cream?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like 9, 10 years old, like obviously. And he's like, "What's your favorite kind? I'll get you your favorite kind of ice cream, but you need to promise that you don't tell your parents anything that we're doing here." And I was just like, "Just give me ice cream." So he's like, "Okay, so what's your favorite?" I'm like, "Chocolate." He's like, "Okay, give me a minute." Goes into my parents' freezer, says it's chocolate ice cream, hands it to me. It is not chocolate ice cream. It was coffee ice cream. And I really do not like coffee. So I was very upset. And I ended up telling my parents that there was this huge party. But I was being, manipulated. And, some people, when they hear this, they might be like, "That's not even a big deal. That happened to me too." Like that. But that's just one example of how I was being introduced to manipulation, bribery, people pleasing. Like these acts may have been innocent in nature, but I'm this 9-year-old sponge who's absorbing everything around me, thinking that like, oh, so that's how you treat people. Like when you want people to do what you want, you bribe them, you manipulate them, and that's just one little example. That's why it's so important to pay attention to your inner healing, because your children are watching. Children are watching. Whether you're a caregiver and you're a nanny, or you're an aunt or an uncle or a cousin, or as an adult, you are responsible for how you carry yourself. Children are watching you. It is so important to make responsible decisions. And since my sisters are grown now, they're making the choice to continue to abuse. They're making the choice to condone abusive behavior by my parents. Like I mentioned in my last live, my mother's spanking me at 28 years old. And my oldest sister is like, "You deserved it." How does that make any sense? And this is in front of her children. Do you know how confusing that must be for her children? Like, okay, so parents can spank their children? Like, how confusing is that? But then at the same time, you're like, "We don't hit." But then you're like, "But when you're disrespectful, like, it's okay to spank." Like, the concept makes no sense. It just makes no sense. Like, let's use our words. Let's communicate. That was never something my family could do, was use your words and communicate. There was so much dysregulated emotions happening that they were not able to sit with their emotions long enough to communicate the way that they were feeling and address the problems that are deep within. They couldn't do it. They still haven't. They probably never will. And one of the things that my oldest sister would always say is like, you can't change them, D'Angela. They are who they are. You either love them for who they are and you take them as they are, or you'll be just like DJ. And it was like, is that an insult? Because now I'm like, compare me to DJ all you want. Like, yes, I will be like DJ. Like, he's my role model. He is an inspiration. I am so proud to say that that's my brother. The amount of strength at 23 years old. Our brains are not even fully developed until we're 25 years old. He was a 23-year-old man having to make the decision to leave abuse. Do you know how beautiful that is? Like, I sit with that and I am just like, wow. And then my abusive family has the audacity to speak so ill of my brother for years. And I was a part of that. I'm just as guilty in that. And I was so selfish. Like, why is DJ not talking to us? And I wonder, some people have reached out to me and spoken to me about this, but there's still so many that haven't, where I wonder what was going through people's minds when they started to see that DJ was no longer a part of the family. Because it's happening now with me. And my family is playing victim, like they always will. And so when I first left, friends of the family would message me and be like, it's so wrong what you're doing. Like, she's your mother. She's your mother. Or they'll message me and say, well, not anymore, but in the very beginning, they would message me and say, from the looks of your mom's pages, she misses you. And it's like, is that supposed to get me to go back? So now that I'm sharing and creating content, explaining and exposing things that I've experienced, they're just watching from afar now. They're like, I don't even know what they're saying because they won't talk to me. Like these friends that once said like, oh, but they're your mother and like her page and she's so sad. And it's like, yeah. Do you think that this is what I wanted? No. Nobody wants this. Nobody decides that they want this. This is a decision that is so hard to make. But I would make it 1,000 times over. I would continue making this decision because my abusive family is never going to change. Like, I am like 90% confident that my mother and father will never change. Especially if they stay married forever. Like, and they love that. Like, they love to say, we've been together 30 plus years and, we may have our problems, but we're still married. It's like, don't celebrate that. Like, your problems are so deep. It is okay to leave. But they celebrate the fact that they stay, even though there's so much abuse. So that concept baffles me. Doesn't make any sense. So the longer that they stay together and celebrate that, even though there's as much abuse as there is, neither one of them are ever going to change. So I'm like 90% confident that my mother and father will never change. My sisters, there's hope that they can change because they were the children in this too, just like my brother and me. So there's hope that they can change. I don't know the percentage, honestly, It's, like I said, my mother and father, I'm like 90% sure that they would never change. But like maybe my sisters, there's like 70% chance that they'll 70% chance that they'll never change. There's maybe like a 30% chance that they will. But I don't, my oldest sister at least, will always back up my parents, even though she experienced abuse too. So it's interesting. It's interesting when you start thinking about it. But like I said, the amount of people reaching out to me is just, I spoke in my therapy about this today where I'm like, I feel so seen, like so seen. And it literally goes to show you that I'm going to continue making my content because you have no idea how many people are watching and resonating with this. And some of those people may not even reach out to me, but they could be watching and thinking, wow, good for her. I know there's people out there thinking, wow, this girl's nuts. But I also know that there's people watching who are so appreciative of my content, who know me and who also don't know me, who feel inspired. And that is why I do what I'm doing. And I will continue to keep doing what I'm doing because not only am I helping others, but I'm helping me. And I'm helping my children. And even if my abusive family wants to attack me at all costs, because they've been trying, I'm never going to stop. Never am I ever going to stop. And I'm going to keep speaking my truth. And if my extended family don't like that, then the people who love me and accept me for who I am, they'll be in my life. And the people that want to judge me from afar and, then they're not going to be in my life. So, but some extended family that I went to go visit like a couple weeks back, I'm just happy I got to see them. But listening to their perspective of things is just like, ooh, this is... So I don't know if that will last forever, of me putting up with the way they speak to me, or the way that they don't say anything but like silently judge, or like watch my content and then just like not call me anymore, or it's just very interesting. But I'm always going to have love for my extended family and my immediate family, my abusive family, because they are my family and I love them. But I love myself more. I love my children more. I love the fact that I'm dedicated to healing more. I will never put up with the abuse again. And the more that they want to act like none of this actually happened and that I'm the crazy one, the more it's just hurting them. So, yeah, I'm honestly just so grateful. So for those of you who have reached out, it means the world to me. And I'm so appreciative of you. And for those who haven't reached out but watch my content, thank you. Whether you're judging me or being supportive, it's okay. So I'm never going to stop. Good things are coming, and I'm just so grateful. So thanks for tonight, guys. Thanks for those of you who have come and who will watch later. I'm so very grateful. All right, take care, everybody.